Algebra II 8.3b, we're going to talk about how to solve quadratic equations with the quadratic formula by using approximation. If you haven't seen the previous videos for Chapter 8, you might become lost or confused while you're watching this, and if you do, you can just click on this video's description to watch the previous videos to clear up any confusion. We can use a calculator or square root table to find rational number approximations to the exact solutions given by quadratic formulas. So just remember, because of rounding, a calculator or a table might lead us to slightly different answers, and it could depend on the brand of your calculator, and it depends on how you round or to what place value you round. 3.60555 could be rounded to 3.6 or 3.61, depending on what is asked of you. Is it rounded to the tenths or the hundredths? We can also approximate radicals by comparing them to perfect roots. The square root of 9 is a 3, the square root of 16 is a 4, so we can find the square root of 12 by figuring that it's in between this one and this one. So we can test different answers like 3.5 times 3.5. That's a little too big. That gives us 13.25. We could try 3.4 times 3.4. That gives us 11.56. That's a little small. We could try 3.45 times 3.45. That gives us 11.9, so that's kind of close. So we can say it's approximately 3.45. But most of you have calculators. And we learned this in Algebra I, video 11.1c. It's going to be a link in this description to that video also. But you should have a square root table, and you can also find one online. So we can approximate the solution for this equation. This negative 5 plus the square root of 13, if we use a square root table in the back of the book, we just look for where 13 is, and we see it's 3.606 right there, see? I used my calculator, though, so I got this nice long approximation, and we do the addition here and get a negative 1.3944488 divided by 6. And we're using the approximate sign because this decimal really goes on longer, so it's not exact. And we come up with a negative 0.232408116, and it goes on. Rounding it to the nearest hundredth, we get a negative 0.23. See? So it's easy to just use the calculator or the square root table to do this very quickly. Now this is plus square root of 13. If we did minus square root of 13, and this is actually a problem from the previous video. This was a solution to the previous video. It was plus square root of 13 and minus square root of 13 for our answer with the negative 5 here. So we just do the subtraction now, and we get a negative 8.60555513 divided by 6. We do our division, and we get this nice long number that we can round to the nearest hundredth as negative 1.43. This 4 tells the 3 to stay the same. Now, we could have rounded first. We could have said, okay, well, instead of doing this, we could just say 3.6 and rounded it to that and divided it, did our subtraction and got a negative 8.6, divided it by 6, and it still would have been around negative 1.43. It would have had slightly different numbers back here, but when we round it to the nearest tenth or hundredth, it's pretty close. So usually they tell you to do the division first because you'll be way more accurate if you're not rounding, okay? It'll be way more accurate, especially in chemistry and science and stuff. So we can approximate the solutions to 3x squared plus 2x equals 7. We got to rewrite it into standard form of a quadratic equation first, like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, like this. So we're going to add a negative 7 to each side of the equation, set this side as additive inverses as a 0 pair, so we get a 0 on the other side of the equal sign. We've got 3 for A, 2 for B, and a negative 7 for C, and we substitute those into the quadratic formula that we talked about in the last video. And we get, instead of this, we get this. So now we can distribute this negative into the 2 and get a negative 2 plus or minus. This is, instead of b squared, we have 2 squared because that's the value for b. And here's the value for a and the value for c. We do our math. We get a negative 4 times a negative 21. We get a positive 84. And Now we have 2 squared plus 84. That's going to give us an 88 underneath our radical sign. We can use a calculator to find the square root of 88. We can also use a square root table, which gave us approximately 9.381. I used my calculator. And we do our addition or subtraction. When we see this is plus or minus here, so if we do plus, we're going to do a -2 plus our long decimal. That's going to give us a positive 7.3808, and it goes on, divided by 6. When we do the division, we get 1.23 when it's rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay? When we do the minus side, because it's plus or minus, here's the plus, now we're going to do the minus. We have -2 minus this 9.38 long decimal number. We get a negative 11.3808315196. And when we divide this number by the 6, we get approximately -1.896, and so on and so on. This is a negative, isn't it? So we can round this -1.896 to a -1.90, rounded to the nearest hundredth. So just look in the back of your textbook, and there should be a square root table. If not, you can just Google square root table in images, and you'll see them come up. Or you could use your calculator. You hit the square root symbol, you put in the number. For this one, you'd hit the square root symbol, then you put in 13, and you just hit equals. And it should come right up, okay? Our next video is 8.4a. I'm going to talk about the discriminant and quadratic equations, and I've got a theorem for you. I'm going to add this video to the Algebra II playlist for studying and review. And back in Chapter 13 in Algebra I last year, we talked about this. And 13.4b talked about the discriminant. And I'm also going to have that link to 11.1c from Algebra I, where it talks about how to approximate the answer for a square root, okay? Like we did in the beginning back here, okay, for that video. And there's going to be links to the previous videos for Chapter 8, so if you've missed any, you could just click on those links and study them, okay? I don't want you to miss anything, all right? Make your life easier by following all the steps, okay? Keep trying. We're almost at summer here, and I hope I'll see you next video. Bye.